والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطاهرين ما دام ما في السماوات والأرضين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم إنا نسألك علما ينفعنا ويرفعنا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء. وبعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we thank and praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His many blessings that He has bestowed upon us, and we beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in those blessings. Alhamdulillah, by His grace, we have reached lesson number 5 in terms of our reading of al-Waraqat. We are currently busy with the Ahkam, which is the plural of the word Hukam. Early on we had discussed that according to Imam al-Haramain, there are 7 Ahkam, there are 7 legal rulings if you like. Today we're going to be looking at the ruling al-mandub, al-hukm al-mandub. We're going to look at the definition bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we're going to go into a literal breakdown of the word, and we're going to juxtapose the concept of mandub to other rulings to get a better understanding of the concept bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So without further ado, let's look to the text now. It reads, وَالْمَنْدُوبُ مَا يُثَابُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى تَرْكِهِ. So very simply, the word mandub, it is defined as that which يُثَابُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ. A person will be rewarded for its performance. وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى تَرْكِهِ. A person will not be punished for non-performance, for omitting it. In other words, when you do it, you get rewarded. If you do not do it, you will not get punished. So in terms of the slide we have in front of us, I've given the following translation of the technical definition of mandub. It says, mandub is that whose performance is rewarded and whose non-performance is not punished. So let's think of a very simple example bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of mandub. We look to the issue of using a toothstick, a miswak, to make siwak, to use a toothstick to brush your teeth. What do we define it as? We define that particular act as mandub. What do we mean by mandub? That if you do it, in other words, if you use a miswak, if you use the toothstick to clean your teeth, you will be rewarded for it. If you don't, you omit doing it. You do not do it in terms of your wudu, nor do you use the toothstick in terms of before you start praying. Then you will obviously not be rewarded, but neither will you be punished. So mandub is that if you do it, you'll get rewarded, and if you omit it, you will not get punished, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So our purpose really here bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not to look at examples per se, but we're looking at the universal, and the universal here would be mandub. You're rewarded for its commission, and you are not punished for its omission. So let's look now to the text bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We go to the next one. So the literal meaning of the word mandub, it comes from the word nadaba, and nadaba basically means talaba, in other words, to request or to ask. So from a Sharia perspective, when we say something is mandub, in other words, literally it means matlub, and talaba means to request, to ask for something. So a mandub is something which is requested. Now, we go on now, and here the scholars have an interesting discussion. They say that mandub, we know the literal meaning of mandub is matlub, to request. The scholars now ask the question that the word mandub, is it ma'mur bihi? Is it, if you wanted to, for lack of a better English term, is it ma'mur bihi? Is it commanded literally or is it commanded metaphorically? So what happens is they agree that when something is mandub, it is matlub. But now they ask the question also, is it ma'mur? They agree, yes, it is ma'mur, because amara means to command. Ma'mur, you are commanded to it, not in a binding manner, and as we know from the definition, in a non-binding manner. Now, so you are commanded by it. But the word amara, does it include nadab in terms of the literal purport of the word amara, or does it include mandub in its metaphorical ambit, in terms of its metaphorical application? So I'm going to rephrase that now in terms of the wording of the slide. It says, does the root letters amara include mandub by virtue of its original placement, or is it an amr metaphorically? So we agree that mandub is matlub, that's the literal meaning of it. Is it ma'mur bihi? Yes, we agree. How is a mandub ma'mur bihi? Is it because of the literal placement of amara, or does the word amara include mandub, not in terms of its literal capacity, but in terms of its metaphorical capacity? So we find that the scholars differ in this particular regard. So some scholars are of the view that I need to go back. Mandub, the original meaning of nadib is talab. Mandub is request from Sharia perspective. Okay, so there are two views. The former view argues that the word al-amr means, so the former view would now be that, the word mandub is included under the ambit of ma'mur bihi. How? Because that is the literal meaning of the word amara. The literal meaning of the word amara. So that particular view, it argues that amara means to ask for something and to request. As such, mandub is requested and thus falls under the ambit of the original placement of the word. In other words, mandub is something that is commanded, ma'mur bihi literally, not metaphorically, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So you might want to ask, what is the proof for that? That something is mandub, it's recommended, you're going to be rewarded for doing it, but you're not going to be punished for it. So now we ask the question, that mandub act, again, is it ma'mur bihi? Is it being commanded? We all agree, we say, yes, it is being commanded. Now, the word mandub, is it commanded by the original placement of the word amara? In other words, when you say amara, then biwad'ihi al-awwal, so to say, by its original placement, the placement of that word, when that word was placed, it was meant to entail mandub, a recommended act as well. So the former view says, yes, that is exactly the case. That when you use the word amara, it includes that which you are requested to do in a binding manner, and literally it also includes that which you are requested to do, though it may be in a non-binding manner. So now you ask the question, what is your proof for that? So we draw our proof from the Holy Quran in that particular regard, and the proof reads as follows. So the following verse of the Holy Quran bases out, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba. So what do you find here? This is a nice one to read through. Inna Allah, indeed Allah, ya'muru. So what do you see here? It's a present tense verb, amara ya'muru, which means to command. Now what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding here? What falls under the ambit of the word amara ya'muru literally? What falls under the literal ambit of this particular word? Bil adli. Allah commands you with justice. Wal ihsan. Ihsan means to do good. So ihsan is not only to do that which is compulsory, to go beyond the call of duty and to do that which is good. Now that is something which is recommended, and it's something which is mandub. So we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in this particular context, He uses the word amara to include that which is mandub, and therefore the scholars who go with this particular view, they say very clearly that the word mandub, or whatever is mandub, is ma'mur, is commanded. How is it commanded? It is literally commanded, fall under the literal purport of the word, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We go on to the next part. There's an opposing view. There's another view. Again, just to backtrack, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want to keep things as simple as possible. We said mandub is what? Ma yuthabu ala fi'li. You will be rewarded for you doing it. Wala yu'aqabu ala tarki. You will not be punished for not doing it. Okay, so it's mandub. So mandub is matlub. It is being requested from you. That's a literal meaning. Is it ma'mur bihi? Yes, it is ma'mur bihi. how is it ma'mur bihi? How is it that a mandub is something which you are commanded with? Either literally, because the word amara covers it, or it doesn't cover it literally, but rather if you want to say, masalan, amartuka bisiwak, and now you know, I said amartuka bisiwak, you know that miswak is recommended to do. Now when I use the word amara, I'm not using it in its literal sense to cover that which is mandub. I have to use it in its metaphorical sense to cover that which is mandub, because the opposing view, the second view that we're going to mention now, says that when the word amara is used in its literal sense, it means something which you are commanded to do, and you need to fulfill it. When you fulfill it, you will be rewarded. If you don't fulfill it, you're going to be punished for it. So if I want to use the word amara to include a mandub thing, I need to use the word amara in its metaphorical sense. And that's basically what the opposing view says now, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says that, so the latter view, the opposing view, holds that nadb is only an amr metaphorically, not literally. This is borne out in the following verse. So let's again look at the verse and look at the word amr. فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ. So should beware those who go against his command. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word amr. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you go against his amr, then there are particular consequences. What are the consequences? أَن تُصِيبَهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ, that strife will before them. أَوْ يُصِيبُهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, or a painful torment will before them. So let's just read through the translation here. So let those who turn away from obeying his command beware lest calamitous trial befall them, or they be smitten after death with a painful chastisement. So those who say that mandub is not included in the literal port of the word amr, they use this particular verse. They say because Allah SWT says those who go against the amr, what happens to them? A painful punishment will befall them, or a painful punishment has the potential to befall them, lest Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives them. So if you go against something which is mandub, then a mandub, the omittance of a mandub act is not threatened by a calamitous punishment. So they infer therefrom that the word amr in its literal sense does not include that which is mandub. It only includes that which is wajib, that which is fard, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. You might recall maybe some of the other usul books talking about al-amr lil-wujub, that haqiqatul amr lil-wujub, the real meaning for which an amr has been placed is for wujub. So if that is the literal real meaning, and we want to include mandub under that particular purport, what do we have to do? We're going to have to use the word amr in its metaphorical sense in order for mandub to be included, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay. So now, having put that discussion behind us, that's not contained in the Waraqat itself. It's contained in one of the footnotes on Ibn al-Firkah's sharh on the Waraqat. Be it as it may, we get back to our point of discussion. Excuse me. We looked at the term mandub. What is mandub? يثاب على فعله, you will be rewarded for doing it. ولا يعاقب على تركه, a person will not be punished for omitting it. So what do we find in the clause? The first thing we find in the clause is mandub is that if you do it, you will be rewarded. Now that particular clause, it seems to include that which we know to be a mandub act. For example, Salatul Duha, as you will see in a moment. So think about Salatul Duha. If you do it, you will be rewarded for it. If you omit it, you won't be punished for it. So let's look at the first clause. You will be rewarded for doing it. Now, if mandub is defined in this particular way, it is going to include mandub and it's going to exclude certain other things which is not mandub. In other words, you don't get a reward for doing it. So let's see how that plays out. So the scholars say mandub shares with wajib in that a person is rewarded for their performance. So if you just look at the first part of this particular definition, ma yuthabu ala fi'li, that which you will be rewarded for, and now we look at wajib. And we say wajib is also that which you will be rewarded for it. So mandub and wajib, they share in as far as you will be rewarded for its commission. Now, how do we differ? How do we make a difference between mandub and wajib if you're going to be rewarded for both of them? How do we differentiate between the two? We're going to differentiate between the two based on the latter concept. And what is the latter concept? The latter concepts in terms of mandub, what does it say? وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى تَرْكِهِ. you will not be punished for leaving off a mandub act. But when it comes to a wajib act, if you are guilty of leaving it off, then what's going to happen? You're going to be punished. And this particular aspect here reads in terms of the notes. It differs from the same. In other words, mandub differs from wajib in that there is no punishment for its non-performance. When you do not do a mandub act, you're not going to get punished. However, like Salatul Duha for example, but if you don't do your Fajr prayer, which is fard, and then you're going to be punished for it, and that is where a distinction is drawn between a wajib and mandub. They're the same in terms of getting reward for doing it, but they're not the same in terms of its omittance, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We go now, still continuing with the clauses, and it's basically only two clauses if you look at it. يُثَابُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ, you're rewarded for doing it. وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى تَرْكِهِ, you will not be punished for omitting it. So mandub is defined as that whose performance is rewarded. It differs from the performance of. So we're still with the first clause. Mandub, you're going to be rewarded for doing it. Now, it differs from the performance of a mubah. So if you do something which is mubah, and we gave an example that, for example, I decide to drink water now, or I decide to drink fresh orange juice. Now, what is the hukum of that? It is mubah. What is mubah? You neither rewarded for doing it, and neither are you rewarded for omitting it. So if I do something which is mubah, like drinking water now, it's completely mubah for me to do it. If I do it, I'm not going to get reward for it. And that sets mubah apart from mandub, because a mandub thing, if you do it, you're going to get reward for it. The next one, still based on the first, a makruh act. If you do a makruh act, then one doesn't get any reward for it. So for example, it is makruh to stand and urinate. So a person stands and urinates, he's not going to get reward for it. But a mubah act, not mubah, sorry, but mandub act, if a person does it, like he uses the miswak, then he's going to be rewarded for it. So now, in terms of reward for it, we're also setting ourselves apart from the mubah, which is no reward, the makruh also no reward, and also mahadur. If you do a mandub act, you get reward for it. If you do a haram act, you're not going to get reward for it. Rather, you're going to get punished. And that's basically what is summed up in terms of the text that I have in front of you. So just for class purposes, let's look at the following bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does it say? It says that mubah, so mandub sets itself, mubah sets itself apart from mandub, because mubah doesn't attract any reward. Makruh sets itself apart from mandub, also it attracts no reward. And a mahadur, in other words haram, as we will see later, it also sets itself apart from a mandub, in the fact that a mandub you get rewarded for doing it. A mahadur you're not going to get reward, rather you're going to get punished, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We go on to the next part now, the next hukam shar'i. The next hukam shar'i reads as mubah. It reads as mubah. We spoke about mubah a moment ago, and we distinguished mubah from mandub. If you do a mandub act, you get rewarded for it. If you do a mubah act, you don't get any reward, and neither do you get punished for omitting it. We look now to the next issue bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is mubah. Like I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to read through the definition and provide a translation for the definition, and we're going to break it down the same way like we broke down mandub. So mubah reads as follows: وَالْمُبَاحِ مَا لَا يُثَابُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى تَرْكِهِ. Mubah is that which a person will not be rewarded for doing it. And the example I gave earlier on was to drink water. To drink water is mubah under normal circumstances. وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى تَرْكِهِ, and neither is a person punished for omitting it. Right now, it is simply religiously neutral for me to drink water. If I drink the water, I'm not going to get rewarded from it. If I desist from drinking water, I'm not going to get punished for it. So the definition of mubah here reads, it is that whose performance is not rewarded and whose non-performance is not punished. If you do it, you won't get rewarded. If you don't do it, you will not get punished. So we're going to look at a number of the clauses here bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but before we do that, we're going to go into the literal meaning of the word mubah. Mubah we translate as religiously neutral. Let's look to what the scholars have to say in terms of the literal meaning of the word mubah, basically where it comes from. So it comes from the root letters, I think it's ba, waw, ha, baha. That's the past tense of it. So the literal meaning of mubah is al-ittisa', which translates as spaciousness. So you can already think about the correlation between the literal meaning of the term mubah and its technical meaning. Literally, the word mubah means spaciousness. So it's religiously neutral. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you as the morally responsible that latitude, that spaciousness, that you can either do it or you can omit it, and there's absolutely no consequence to it. But sticking to the literal meaning, our scholars talk about bahbuhatul Jannah. Let's go to the slides here. The spaciousness of Jannah is referred to as bahbuhatul Jannah. Again, you see the word baha, bahbuha. Naam. The expression baha bisirrihi, he exposed his secret, is used when a person draws out his secret from the confinement of secrecy to the openness of apparentness. So in other words, a person discloses his secret. What happens in that particular regard? It was contained perhaps within yourself, and then you let it out. So now when you let it out, it's out there. And that's why when a person discloses his secret, the word baha is used, because secret was contained. Now it is uncontained. It is right out there in the open, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Again, here in terms of the preparatory notes that I've made, in mubah, expansiveness has been facilitated. We're talking about mubah now. Technically, when we say something is mubah, what do we mean thereby? In mubah, expansiveness has been facilitated for the morally responsible, as it is said to him, there is no objection for you in doing it or omitting it. The choice is yours, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The next issue we're going to do, again the same like we did for mandub a moment ago. We're going to apply the same rules in relation to mubah. So what did we say? What is mubah? ما لا يثاب على فعله, no reward for doing it, ولا يعاقب على تركه, no punishment for omitting it. So mubah differs from the performance of a wajib. And mandub, since mubah does not attract any reward. That is quite obvious. It's just the reverse of what we spoke about earlier on. If you do a mubah, you don't get reward. If you do a mandub, you're going to get reward. If you do a wajib, you're definitely going to get a reward for it. So in that particular way, mubah sets itself apart from mandub and wajib, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Both wajib and mandub attract a reward for its performance. There is, however, a challenge with the definition given above. There's a challenge with the definition given above, because the definition says لا يثاب على فعله ولا يعاقب على تركه. So the challenge with the above definition of mubah is that it includes makruh as well. Why? Because the performance of a makruh is not rewarded, and neither is his not performance punished. So just think about it. We're going to define makruh later on. Makruh says ما لا يثاب على فعله. You will not get rewarded for doing it. And now when we look at mubah, we say ما لا يثاب على فعله. You will not get rewarded for it. So there's a problem with the definition, because the definition of mubah, it includes makruh as well, but it's not supposed to include makruh. For example, I'm drinking water now, so I take a sip water. It's mubah for me to sip. So in doing it, I'm not going to get reward for that. I stand and eat now, which is deemed as makruh. So I'm doing that. I also don't get reward for doing it. So this definition of mubah includes makruh, and that is actually a problem, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Further, to take this particular idea further, the scholars say that it also includes haram, as the performance of a haram is not rewarded, rather punished. And again, the non-performance of haram is not punished, but rather rewarded, if you look at the latter part of the definition now, because the latter part of the definition says وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى ولا يعاقب على تركه. You will not be ولا يعاقب على تركه. You will not be punished for omitting it. So then what happens in that particular regard? The non-performance of haram is not punished, but rather rewarded. So again, the problem with the above definition is that in the first part of the definition, is in as far as the first part of the definition goes, it includes that which is makruh, and also it includes that which is haram, and haram cannot be included, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So therefore our scholars they suggest, or rather Ibn al-Firkah strongly suggests that we create another definition for the term mubah. A definition that is both jami' and mani. It includes what you intend to include, but very importantly, it needs to exclude that which you do not wish to include within the definition. So the alternate definition reads as follows. It says, مَسْتَوَى طَرَفَاهُ فِي نَظْرِ الشَّارِعِ. Mubah is that whose performance and non-performance is equal from the legislator's perspective. In other words, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perspective, its omittance and its performance and non-performance, its omission and its omission and its commission is basically equal, and this is the better definition for mubah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So this is the definition that we'll settle on. If somebody were to ask you what is mubah, you can translate it as religiously neutral, but when you give a technical definition in terms of the Arabic language, it is best for you to say that water, drinking water right now, it is mubah. How do I define mubah in terms of Arabic? مَسْتَوَاهُ طَرَفَاهُ فِي نَظْرِ الشَّارِعِ. That which both, in other words, its commission and omission is equal, it's level in the sight of the Shari, in other words, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sight. When you drink water or you don't drink the water, it is equal in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the preferred definition for mubah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We go on to the next hukam now, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and here we're going to be looking at what is mahadur. What is mahadur? So let's run through the definition. Mahadur, as you know by now, I've alluded to it earlier on, is a synonym for the term haram, and Ibn al-Firkah uses it interchangeably. So let's look to mahadur. So if you're not familiar with the term mahadur, we will break it down for you now, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but just for now think of haram. So what is the definition of haram, mahadur? So mahadur huwa ma yuthabu ala tarkihi wa yu'aqabu ala fa'lihi. Mahadur is that which you will be rewarded for omitting it. Allah says, La taqrabu zina, don't go close to zina. So you don't go close to zina. So the fact that you omit it, you don't do it, you steer clear of it, you'll be rewarded for it. وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فَعْلِهِ. If one ignores the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he goes ahead and actually perpetrates it, what happens in that particular instance? وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فَعْلِهِ. He will be punished for its commission. So mahdur, haram is you will be rewarded for not doing it, and you will be punished for doing it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The translation here reads as follows: Mahdur is that whose non-performance is rewarded and whose performance is punished, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Again, very quickly we're going to run into what is the literal meaning of the word mahdur. We said mahdur is synonymous to haram, but Imam al-Haramain here uses the term mahdur, and many other scholars also use the term mahdur. So what is the literal meaning? Where does the word come from? So the word mahdur, if you want to, an accusative noun, or the accusative form of the noun, if you wanted to, what is it? What is it? Where does it? What are the root letters? The root letters are hadara. Ha, dha, and ra. What does hadara mean? Hadara is a synonym to mana'a, which basically means to prevent. So an animal pen in terms of the Arabic language is referred to as a hadira. Hadira. Why is that? Because it prevents animals, the pen prevents animals from exiting, from running away, from fleeing. So mahdur or haram is that which is legally prohibited. In other words, the pen prevents the animals from coming out. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if you wanted to, Allah has haram and Allah puts a pen about it that you can't have access to it. That which is mahdur means you are prohibited therefrom, you cannot engage in it. And again, if you come to the technical meaning now, what does the technical meaning say? Ma yuthabu ala tarkihi. You will be rewarded for omitting it, not going close to it. Leave it in that pen and leave it in that place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ring-fenced it, and don't go close to it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Again, now we're going to go through those steps that we've been following, and those are that you have certain clauses within the definition. Those clauses seeks to include certain things and exclude other things. So again, keep in mind the definition. What does the definition say? Yuthabu ala tarkihi. You will be rewarded for leaving it. وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فَعْلِهِ. You'll be punished for perpetrating it, for performing it. So what are the distinguished characteristics? Haram distinguishes itself from wajib as far as omittance is concerned. Omittance of haram is rewarded while the omittance of a wajib is punished. So I think that one is very clear for us in as far as omittance is concerned. When you omit a haram, you get rewarded. When you omit a wajib, I must pray my asr salah, I omit it, what's going to happen? A person is going to be punished for doing that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The same phenomenon distinguishes haram from mubah as well, since the omittance of a mubah is not rewarded, while the omittance of a haram is rewarded. Again, that's fairly simple and straightforward. The last one, similarly, haram distinguishes itself from mandub, as the omittance of a mandub is not rewarded, whereas the omittance of a haram is rewarded. If you don't do a mandub, you're not going to get rewarded for it. But if you don't do a haram, then you're going to be rewarded for it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We go on to the next slide, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what are we talking about now? Let me turn you to that slide, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This one we covered already. We go on to the next one, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just want to double check if we've covered the previous one. Haram distinguishes itself from wajib as far as motives is concerned. And then there's a duplication here, so we're not going to worry about that too much. And we're going to go to our last slide for today, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, talking about distinguishing characteristics. Makruh distinguishes itself from haram in that its performance does not warranty a punishment, whilst the performance of a haram warrants the same. So there in the last part, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah, we've distinguished haram from makruh. When a person performs a haram act, what happens? A person gets a punishment. But if a person performs a makruh act, then he doesn't get a punishment, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So we've done 3 now in this particular lesson. We've looked at mandub, we've looked at mandub, we've looked at mubah, and we've looked at haram mahadur. In our next lesson, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're going to be looking at the concept of makruh. Till we meet again, barakallahu feekum, wa jazakumullahu khairal jaza, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.